Oh,
Welcome to an exploration of single-subject experimental research. This presentation is hosted by
Hyunji Angela Kang.
Angela Thornton
and Catherine Wood. What is single-subject experimental research? According to Mills and Gay, single-subject experimental research focuses on examining one person or a group of individuals defined as being within a group. Wasson defines single-subject research designs as designs that can be applied when the sample size is 1 or when a number of individuals are considered as one group. If the research includes more than one person, the people within the group share strong similarities. For example, a researcher could study a group of 4 or 5 young women who experienced pregnancy during their sophomore year of high school who are struggling to balance school and family. The young women's grades could be assessed for a semester to determine a baseline. An intervention could be applied to the group to see the effects of improving grades. Due to the focus on an individual or a small group of similar individuals, this method has proven to be useful in studying students with special needs, such as physical and/or learning disabilities.
What is the difference between a single subject design and group designs in educational research? Research methods using group designs yield data which can be generalized to a larger population. The samples are usually used to obtain a representation from a broader population. As Mills and Gay explained, the goal of most educational research is to benefit a broad audience. A single subject design aims at one student or a small group. Group designs usually involve a control group and a treatment group. The control group does not experience the treatment. Therefore, if the treatment proves to be beneficial, they do not profit from its effects. In a single subject group, the control and treatment group are the same. Using a single subject approach can help avoid ethical issues which may arise if a person or group is denied a potentially beneficial treatment.
the single variable rule. A main principle of single subject research is the single variable rule. This rule states only one variable at a time should be manipulated.
So how does single subject research work? As we have already discussed, the control group and the treatment group are one and the same in single subject research. Wasson describes this as a treatment and non-treatment phase, with performance being measured in each phase. There are 3 major methods within the single subject experimental design. The 3 methods are the ABA withdrawal design, the multiple baseline design, and the alternating treatments design. The ABA withdrawal design can be performed in several different ways. The AB design, the ABA design, the BAB design, or the ABAB design.
AB design. The AB design starts with observing a characteristic or trait repeatedly until a baseline of stability is established. When the baseline is established, the treatment or intervention is begun. The researcher records the subject's actions with the intervention in place. If an improvement is seen during the intervention phase in comparison to the baseline, it can be assumed that the intervention is beneficial.
In the ABA design, the baseline is determined before the intervention takes place, as was seen in the AB design. An additional step is added as the intervention is removed from the subject. If the intervention has been successful, generally the removal of the intervention will lead to the subject returning to baseline activity.
BAB design. If the subject's behavior or need is so great that intervention is needed immediately, the researcher may start with the intervention immediately. Since no baseline data is collected, it may be difficult to determine how effective the intervention is. One positive aspect of this design is that the study ends with the subject continuing in the treatment phase.
ABAB design. An advantage of the ABAB design is that it starts with an observation of baseline behavior and it ends with the subject continuing in the treatment phase. Basically, a baseline is established followed by treatment. The treatment is withdrawn from a period of time to observe a baseline pattern. Then treatment continues for the subject. This design helps the researchers see if the treatment was effective. It also allows the subject of the study to continue in the treatment if it does prove to be effective.
Multiple baseline design focuses on different approaches or treatments. Normally, single subject research focuses on one subject exhibiting a specific behavior. Treatment occurs in a single location or setting. Wasson explains that in multiple baseline design, one variable, subject, behavior, or setting, is manipulated while the other two variables remain constant. Data are collected on several behaviors for one subject, one behavior for several subjects, or one behavior and one subject in several settings. For example, the behavior may be manipulated with the subject and setting remaining the same. Later, the setting may be manipulated with the subject or behavior remaining the constant variables. Multiple baseline design is frequently used to compare the same intervention presented to different subjects at different times. After a baseline is established, one subject may start receiving treatment while two other subjects remain at baseline observation. Later, the treatment is added to the second subject and eventually to the third. In the meantime, the first subject may stop treatment and return to baseline. Since multiple subjects, behaviors, or settings are included in a multiple baseline design, the results of this type of research may prove to be more definitive than other single subject designs.
Alternating treatments design. In the alternating treatments design, two treatments are used on the same subject, but not in the same session. In a similar fashion to tossing a coin and calling heads or tails, the treatment for each session is selected randomly. For example, treatment 1 may be used on days 1, 2, 4, 7, and 8, with treatment 2 on days 3, 5, 6, 9, and 10, depending on random selection. This method allows for continued treatment through the study. The most effective method of treatment can be continued. Treatment is not delayed because the goal of an alternating treatment design treatment is not to determine the effectiveness of a treatment, but to determine which treatment is most effective for the subject. This method allows for more than one treatment to be tested at once.
What about data analysis? As Siegel points out, data for single-subject experimental research is frequently recorded on line graphs. The line graphs show at a quick glance the baseline performance and any improvements seen during the treatment phase. Since the focus is on one subject, statistic data may not represent the study well. For example, a 7% improvement following intervention may sound statistically pleasing. However, the amount of improvement may not prove significant in the clinical or classroom setting. According to Mills and Gay, the use of T and F tests to determine the statistical significance of a single subject study is currently being debated by researchers.
The hypothesis. Just like most of the research designs we've studied, single subject research requires you to state a hypothesis. According to Mills and Gay, because the emphasis is on therapeutic impact, not contribution to the research base, the researcher is most likely to choose a treatment that he or she thinks will be effective. Therefore, the hypothesis is usually stated in a positive direction.
Single subject research designs review. As a review, here are the basic types of single research designs: ABA, ABAB, alternating treatment, and multiple baseline. The following slides will show you some concrete examples of each design type. Hopefully, these will give you some ideas of how you could actually use single subject research in your classroom.
ABA design example. First, we have an ABA example. Tyler, a second grade boy, repeatedly wanders around the room during class. The teacher decides on an intervention that he believes might be effective for Tyler. Remember, single subject research typically has a directional hypothesis. The teacher likely has some reason for believing that the timer will be an effective intervention. He decides to test the hypothesis using the ABA procedure of establishing a baseline, introducing treatment, and then withdrawing the treatment. If Tyler shows higher on-task behavior during the treatment phase, then the intervention was successful.
And as you can see from the graph, the intervention was effective. Tyler's time on task began increasing immediately after the intervention, the 8-minute mark, and rose up to 12 minutes. Once the intervention was removed, his time on task dropped back to 8 minutes and then steadily fell to 1 minute. So the intervention worked. Yay! However, there's just one problem, which you have probably spotted already.
An ABA design will leave Tyler in the same old mess. Plus, his teacher is starting to lose patience. One solution to this problem is to add a second treatment phase, an ABAB design. Not only will this give Tyler the continued support that he needs, but testing the intervention twice will also increase the reliability of the results. Let's see what happens when Tyler receives an additional treatment phase.
As you can see, during the second treatment phase, Tyler's time on task immediately began to increase and even surpass the level of the first treatment phase. This confirms the original findings that this intervention is effective for Tyler. It also means that Tyler will continue to get the support he needs.
Alternating treatments. Let's look at one more Tyler scenario. Instead of using an ABA or ABAB design, Tyler's teacher could have selected 2 different interventions to try. An alternating treatments design would show him which intervention is most effective for Tyler. In an ABA or ABAB design, you are comparing a treatment condition to a non-treatment condition. In an alternating treatment design, you are comparing 2 different treatments. This means that Tyler's teacher does not need to begin with a baseline. He can immediately begin implementing one of the interventions. He will randomly alternate the treatments and then examine the data to decide which intervention is more effective for Tyler. The 2 treatments that the teacher selects are missed recess time for off-task behavior and a timer on the desk. Let's see what the data shows.
After plotting Tyler's time on task for both interventions on the same chart, his teacher can easily see that the timer is a more effective intervention for Tyler than missed recess time. Based on these results, he will want to continue with the timer intervention and drop the recess intervention.
Multiple baseline, one subject, multiple behaviors. Now let's look at some multiple baseline examples. First, we'll look at the one subject, multiple behaviors design. This design is appropriate when you want to target multiple related behaviors in a single student. The chosen intervention has to be appropriate for all of the target behaviors for this design to be valid. In this scenario, Patsy is a 5th grader with multiple behavior challenges. She frequently calls out, wanders the room, and shows aggression towards her classmates. The special education teacher selects an intervention that she thinks will address all 3 behaviors. It is important to note that the treatment is applied to only one behavior at a time. If each behavior only improves after the treatment is applied, then the treatment is concluded to be effective for the student. The data chart should help illustrate this.
So, on days 1 through 3, the teacher collected baseline data on all 3 behaviors: calling out, wondering, and aggression. On days 4 through 7, she implemented the treatment on calling out only. She continued to collect baseline data for wondering and aggression. As you can see, Patsy's calling out behaviors began dropping once the intervention was introduced, but her wondering and aggression stayed high. On days 7 through 9, her teacher began using the intervention on both calling out and wondering. She continued to collect baseline data for aggression. Again, Patsy's calling out and wondering begin decreasing. Aggression stays high. Her aggression only begins to go down once the intervention is applied to that behavior on day 10. Because each of the behaviors began improving only after the intervention was applied to it, the teacher can conclude that this intervention is effective for all 3 of Patsy's problem behaviors.
Multiple baseline, multiple subjects, one behavior example. So far, all the examples have related to behavior, but single subject research can also be used for academic interventions, as in this example. When using a multiple subjects, one behavior design, it is important that the subjects are as similar as possible. Their behaviors need to be exactly or nearly exactly the same, as in this example. 3 first graders, Anna, Amelia, and John, all struggle with sight word memory. Their teacher selects a multisensory intervention that has been successful in the past. The procedure is basically the same as the one subject multiple behavior design. This time, the intervention will be applied to one student at a time. If each student makes progress only after the intervention is introduced, the teacher will be able to conclude that this intervention works for these students' sight word difficulties. Let's see what the data says.
As you can see, the baseline for each student was 0. They each knew 0 sight words. When the teacher began the intervention with Amelia on day 4, Amelia's sight word mastery began to improve. Anna and John stayed at 0. When Anna began the intervention on day 7, her mastery also began to improve. Amelia also continued to improve. John, still in the baseline phase, stayed at 0. Finally, when John began the intervention on day 10, he began to improve. Amelia and Anna continued to improve. The teacher can conclude that this intervention is effective for these students' difficulties because none of them showed improvement without the intervention and all showed improvement with the intervention.
One final example. The multiple baseline design can also be used to test the effectiveness of an intervention across several settings, as in this scenario. A 3rd grade student with ADHD struggles with calling out. His teachers collaborate about intervention strategies and select one to try. Introduce the intervention one setting at a time. As before, the intervention will be introduced one setting at a time. If the behavior improves in each setting only after the treatment is introduced there, then the teacher can conclude that the intervention is effective for the student.
The treatment is introduced first in the regular classroom, while the ESL class and music class stay in baseline. The number of callouts decreases within each setting only after the treatment is introduced. Therefore, the teachers can conclude that they selected an appropriate intervention. Hopefully, these examples have made the different single subject designs easier to understand and helped you to see how single subject research could be used to help you improve your own classroom environment.
According to Mills and Gay, a major criticism of single subject research studies is that they suffer from low external validity. Validity can be increased, however, by replicating the study as many times as possible. To return to our previous examples, if Patsy's teacher replicates her study with other students who show signs of calling out, wondering, and aggression, and continues to get positive results, she can have more confidence in the validity of her intervention. To maintain internal validity, however, it will be essential for her to use the same instrument or measuring procedures and to have similar conditions each time she repeats the study. Otherwise, internal validity will be compromised and she will be unable to generalize her results, according to Mills and Gay.
controlling threats and the importance of baseline stability. Another key to improving validity is to have an adequate baseline measure. For the sake of time, our example data sets showed relatively short baseline phases. However, the greater the number of baseline and treatment measures taken, the greater the likelihood of valid results.
Now, as we have mentioned before, replication is vital to single subject studies. There are three models for replicating a single subject study. According to Mills and Gay, in direct replication, the original researcher repeats the study with the same participants or with similar participants in the same setting. Once enough data has been established, systematic replication can begin. In this phase, several different researchers repeat the study with new participants. Eventually, during clinical replication, several treatments are combined to develop treatment packages, as Mills and Gay call them. These are for the use of complex behavior disorders.
So to review, single subject research designs are generally weak when it comes to external validity, to a point where generalization can become an issue. Studies involving single subject designs that show a treatment to be particularly effective for a certain behavior must still rely on replication across both individuals and groups if the researcher is going to be able to generalize the results. Despite this weakness, single subject designs can be very useful for the teacher wishing to address specific classroom issues. If procedures are followed, results documented, and threats controlled, single subject research can have a powerful practical effect.
While group research may benefit a larger population, we hope you have seen through our presentation how single subject research can help you as a teacher to meet the individual needs of your unique students.